Welcome back to ET with GOTB. Finally, we are getting around to rounding up the season. Part 1. Let's get into it. I'm Rachel.
I'm Sophie.
And this is Extra Time with Girls on the Ball. Okay, before we get into this one, this of course is your weekly reminder to make sure you're subscribed wherever you listen, or wherever you're watching this podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. Leave us a review, leave us a comment. Let us know how you would sum up the season. What would you grade the teams? We are very kind. I think we have to factor that in, that we are nice and we're not going to be too harsh on anybody. But this is part 1. We're going to get through 6 teams in this one, Soph. And yes, it has been a bit delayed, given the season ended back in May. But we've had quite a bit of football since then to discuss. We've had the FA Cup, we've had the Champions League final, we've had the international breaks. You would know that if you were following us across all of our socials at Girls on the Ball on everything. But we did promise that we would run through the WSL, how we thought each team did, so that we can fully close the chapter on this and start looking ahead to the Euros. I'm going to clean these. I don't know if you can see that, but they are so dirty. I don't even know if I'll be able to see the running order. Hang on a second. All right. That's me cleaning my glasses for those of you listening in your ears. Some context. So these grades are not necessarily comparing to other teams. It's based on maybe what we expected from the club at the beginning of the season, a bit of a comparison to their form last season. Have they improved? Are they going backwards? So before you start complaining about, that your team got X while this team got Y, bear that in mind, please and thank you. We're going to make it interesting. I was trying to decide whether we do this alphabetically, whether we do this how the table ended, but just to keep it interesting, we are going to be picking names out of a hat. Can you hear that? Bit of ASMR. And that is how we are going to be picking the 6 teams to chat about. Do you want to pick the first one?
Sure. I'm hoping I can actually remember what happened this season.
That's why I wrote notes, Sophie. What have you picked?
Arsenal.
This is like the Eurovision. Nil point. No. Okay, let's put that to the side. I'm going to leave a little tick because I want to make sure that I don't
miss out
do too many teams or miss out on any teams. Arsenal. Okay, let me just have a little sip of my beverage. Other beverages are available. Arsenal finished second. You're going to get the format of how this is going to go based on this one. 48 points, 12 off the top. Last year they finished third, 50 points and 5 off the top. I'm so going to get called out on my maths being wrong, but somewhere in these episodes. But here we are. Manager at the beginning of the season, Jonas Eideval. Manager at the end of the season, Renee Sleggers. Top goal scorer, Alessia Russo.
In the league.
In the league.
Some of them will be all around, but...
Okay, well, great.
The goals we were looking at were the WSL goals.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Yes, we're kind of talking more about... I'm talking about WSL scores. Yeah. Okay, fine. Highlight of the season, Soph, would you say winning the Champions League?
I think that was probably the highlight of the season. I think, quite a few highlights actually. Some really memorable games, but I think that one takes a win.
For sure. Low point of the season, maybe their start or their end?
Yeah, I think that was it. 5-2 lost to, was it 5-2 to Bayern Munich?
Oh, yeah.
Then followed by the 2-1 loss to Chelsea at home. And before that, there was another loss, which I can't remember off the top of my head.
There was draws to Everton.
It was that three games in that kind of week, 7-day plus period, which really saw the end of Jonas Eideval and kind of put their season on the back foot before it had even begun.
Yeah. And then some might say the end of the season where their heads were in Lisbon when they had 3 games left to finish.
There's more context to that, so I think I'll go with the beginning of the season.
I think Arsenal fans, the main thing they'll say is they still finished second.
Yeah.
And of course got Champions League, obviously, so probably not as bad. Sophie's season summary, please.
Started poorly and got a lot better. I think there might have been some hope that with the pre-season, Jonas Eideval would have been able to get them going, but it was pretty clear, even as they were kind of in European qualification, that things hadn't drastically improved. There were snippets of maybe what they could do, but all too often they were way too rigid creatively. They weren't really, you could see that he was very rigid about what he was doing, wasn't really allowing them to flow and be their creative best. And I think that all changed when Renee Sleggers came in. I think she quite literally changed the game for them. They suddenly became creative outlets that they hadn't had before. You could see the players were able to express themselves They were having fun under her. The fact that, you know, for a long time they had a really wicked run of like
10 games unbeaten?
Something, yeah, like that, but more like the 4+ goals.
Oh, sure.
As well, run as well. So there were some really impressive statistics within the second half of the season. Some really good comebacks. I think we've seen a resilience to Arsenal that we haven't seen before. When you think about the West Ham game, where they were 3-1 down and came back to win 4-3. You know, Bayern Munich at home at Meadow Park, and another one where they showed their resilience to kind of hold on and come back. You think about the Lyon and the Real Madrid games as well. There are instances where you've seen a development of the character of this Arsenal team, I think, that goes beyond just, you know, playing pretty football, which I think on their day they play such pretty football.
Yeah.
But they needed that kind of grit about them, and they are still a long way off maybe Chelsea in that respect, but that improvement has been quite marked, I think. Throughout.
Okay. What do they need to improve, do you feel?
Consistency. I think they need to really figure out how to just get things over the line when they're not playing well. They've done it on occasion. I remember the game away to Everton. In the first half, they weren't playing well, and they managed to find a way in the second half and open things up. But I think that's kind of like still maybe a bit of a lingering hangover from the Owner Side-of-El era, is being unable to break teams down and getting frustrated when they don't, and not having enough, you know, plans B and C to be able to do that. So I think they can work on that. I think it's going to be a really big summer. It's going to be Renee Slegers' first chance, really, with a window to decide how she wants to shape it. So I would expect some movement. They need a central defender to partner Leah Williamson. They need probably more, I would say, more of an enforcer in the midfield area. You know, someone who's a bit tough, gets the tackles in, and really can set the tempo to allow the other players, the more attacking players, to go forward.
And perhaps some fullback and goalkeeper cover, perhaps?
Right back, I think, goalkeeper cover, and I think we'll see another winger in.
Okay. Overall grade, please?
I would give them an A.
An A. Okay, let us know what you think. Too nice? Not nice enough?
I think, for me, getting second, and I know they were 12 points off the top, but getting second, getting that Champions League spot, and then going on and winning the Champions League just kind of makes their season from an A to an A minus, probably.
Yeah, but I also think if they hadn't won the Champions League, we'd probably be scoring them a little bit lower.
A minus, maybe. Yeah. But I think it was still. I think it was still really positive the way that they turned it around.
I think people are quick to forget their start.
Yes, their start, and I think you already, like, to say that they'd finished second in the league when you look at what was happening under Owner Side-of-El at the start of the season. Okay, you would never have imagined that they would have got second.
Sure,
I don't think.
Team number 2. Shake of the hat. Who we got?
Manchester United. Are we going in order of the league?
Well, no, we didn't start with Chelsea.
No,
so Manchester United. Let me just scroll down to my notes here, please, and thank you so much. Manchester United finished third. Points 44, 16 points off the top. Last year they finished fifth on 35 points and 20 points off the top. Manager at the beginning of the season, Mark Skinner. Manager at the end of the season, Mark Skinner. Top goal scorer, Elizabeth Turland. Highlight of the season, I would say probably getting that Champions League spot. What would you reckon? They have a few highlights because they took quite a few points off your Arsenals, your Manchester Cities. You know, I think they'll be memorable as well, but I think getting that Champions League spot.
Yeah, there'll be like a few. I think that game at the Etihad, Everton, that's going to be a massive highlight. But I do think getting that Champions League spot makes a whole lot of difference. They missed out obviously last year, so to be back in that level and to be able to go through, I know they have to go through qualifying again, but just to have that opportunity is really, really big for the club and for these players.
Yeah, absolutely. Low point of the season, perhaps the manner of the defeat in the FA Cup final, would you say, or?
Yeah, I think that they will have been disappointed by that for sure. They would have thought they could have got closer to Chelsea. I think, I'd go with that maybe.
Because
there was a loss to Liverpool as well.
Yes.
I think that will be a big low. Because at that time of the season, they were on, I guess, a really good run of form, I think, and they kind of just really slipped up on that day.
Yeah, okay. Necessary context. This is the something we wanted to include as well for this. Did I say that, the Arsenal? I can't remember. I think I just gave the necessary context. But you know us, we like to provide a little bit of the context around things. One name, Jim Ratcliffe. that was a lot to deal with in terms of noise around the club throughout the season, as well as, support on and off the pitch as well. I'd say also losing captain Katie Zellerman-Mary-Earps at the beginning of the season. There was a lot of pressure on Fallon Tullis-Joyce, and my God, did she deliver. So I do think that's kind of necessary context. And they were probably a little bit disappointed. Despite the FA Cup win, they were probably a little bit disappointed with last season's league performance. So that, I think, is necessary context. Your season summary.
I think it's interesting. I think they've done really well, and certainly since the turn of the year, their form, they were starting to turn draws, the really frustrating draws, into results. I think they got massively improved in their out of possession play. I think Mark Skinner kind of sacrificed maybe some of his style of football to try and get results over the line and made them become a bit more direct. I think they're not one for passing it a lot around the back. They kind of do, get it to Letizia, get it out to Visa into the box kind of thing. So I think there are developments that they could make in terms of their in-possession play, that's for sure. It's an interesting one. I think I understand that some fans will be really disappointed. I think in some respects, I think they think some of the results mask some of the performances. But at the end of the day, results are what count, and it's what got them over the line to be able to get to the Champions League, be able to get them to the next season. I think they do need to start developing, different styles of football to be able to really become a threat within the league, but also the Champions League.
Well, this is the next question. What do they need to improve?
Need more depth, for sure. I think they need more depth in midfield, need more bodies, more defensive as well. I think Lisa Nelson, the jury's kind of still out on her and whether she's been a success. I was really impressed at the World Sevens by Simi Awujo.
Yeah. I
think she has a big career ahead. She's a superstar in the making, I think. And they need to find a way to give these players more time. So that's the other fault of Mark Skinner, is he doesn't rotate all that much.
Yeah.
And it means that, these players who might be hidden gems sit in the wings and don't really get an opportunity to shine. And I think she's definitely got a bright future. And I would say the same in defence. It's all they had a brilliant defence this season, Letizia and Millie Turner. That partnership is so good. But what happens when one of them gets injured? And I know Maya Letizia, she never gets injured, touch wood. And she's played every single minute of the league for ages. But Millie Turner has fractured her foot now. She will be back for the start of the season. But what happens when that partnership gets broken up?
Yeah.
Then they have to bring in someone, I guess, from their fullback area a little bit more, or put Dominique. They were tending to put Janssen into centre back, and that leaves you maybe a little bit light in midfield. Yeah. So those two areas, the defensive midfield, defensive central defence area, I think is going to be needing some backup.
But also a shout out to United and their participation in the World Sevens. They seem to really enjoy themselves. It was a really fun tournament that allowed some of their players to really show off their flair as well.
I think you really saw as well that there's it seems to be from the outside a real togetherness about the team. So no matter what's happened off the pitch in terms of Jim Ratcliffe and all of that nonsense, and maybe to some extent Mark Skinner at points, they seem to really, they seem to be having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
They were on the side of the pitch. They were talking tactics. They were, jumping up and down. They were dancing. And I think it showed kind of that collective kind of spirit around the team itself and the team members. So that would be a positive.
Grade, please.
Then we're giving them an A- because I think getting Champions League football is huge. Finishing third is no mean feat. And
an FA Cup final again.
An FA Cup final again, yes.
For the third year in a row.
A pretty impressive, run in that FA Cup.
We are so nice. Okay, here we go. Third team.
I'm going to try and...
Okay, this is meant to be random, so you're not doing Manchester City. Okay, this is random, I swear.
Manchester City.
Show the class. Makes it easy in the notes.
I really went to the bottom of the hat for that one.
Okay, let me just take them off my list. Number 3. Manchester City finished 4th on 43 points, 17 off the top. Last year they finished 2nd, memorably on 55 points, only losing on goal difference. Manager at the beginning of the season, Gareth Taylor. Manager at the end of the season, interim, Nick Cushing. Welcome back. Top goal scorer, Bunny Shaw. Highlight of the season, it's got to be beating Barcelona in the Champions League. Maybe Manchester City fans will have other highlights. But I do think that was a game that so many, even those who aren't Manchester City fans, just talked about and were so impressed with, because it showed a plan B and it showed a really resilient performance from them as well.
Yeah, I think that was definitely a high of the season. And as you say, it showed a different dimension to them. I think the other one would have been the Chelsea one in the Champions League.
Yeah. Particularly given the injuries they had at that game.
I think people don't really remember that one because it was surrounded by the other Chelsea games that were a bit of a disappointment, to be honest. Yeah. But I think, those two will be a standout of what they can do and what they can achieve without having too much of the ball.
Yeah. Low point of the season, I'm going to say missing out on Champions League. They'll be gutted about that. The necessary context, plagued by injuries to key players and a lack of plan B, I think, under Taylor at times. We will talk about the depth as something that they're going to need and could potentially have helped manage those injuries if they had more of that. But I think the amount of injuries that they had to the players that they had can't be overlooked. I think I remember I've said this before at stats that something like 42% of their team or something was injured at the same time. And, having to deal then with the timing of a new manager coming in when they did during that Chelsea quadruple. So I do think that that's necessary context. Your season summary?
I mean, I think it draws on that lack of depth killed them at the end of the day, especially during that March Madness period.
Which, to be fair, makes that Chelsea win all the more impressive.
Yeah, I think it makes that Chelsea win impressive, but actually it didn't really matter at the end of the day, and it didn't come when it counted, so they didn't really win when they needed to. Depth is a massive issue, and it's not surprising because it's been the same theme for the last few years for Manchester City, but the fact that they haven't had enough players to kind of cover, significant injuries. And yes, you're unlucky when you have that amount of injuries, but you need to have more than, 15 good starting players. Yeah. And there were good points, the fact that Lily Murphy, Gracie Pryor, they broke into the first team.
That would be a highlight.
They got their minutes massively. They've, upped their development really. But the counterpoint to that is they shouldn't be the ones having to be relied on to get you through a season and to get you through to Champions League football if you were going to get there. That's, it's great for their development, but they shouldn't have had that responsibility in the first place because they're Manchester City and they have the funds. And it's the third year in a row where depth has been a real big problem. I think...
Can I just say, I think as well, after losing the league on goal difference, arguably because you lost your top goal scorer right towards the end of the season and didn't have
the warning signs were there. The red flags were there.
You would think that was the moment where you go, right, we really need to...
And I know when you buy Viv Miedema, you expect to have that cover, but I think you still have to look a bit further and deeper down. And there were other problems as well. Lauren Hemp getting injured, Alex Greenwood getting injured. They all combined to create this kind of melting pot of injuries that is really kind of hard to recover from.
Yeah.
I think you're right in terms of Taylor's lack of plan B. All too often they would play the same style of football. And sometimes when they do that and they're up against a team who have worked out how to stop them, they take a minute or, 45 minutes to figure out what to do, if not longer than that. So I think that's something that they need to work with because they've got super tactical players. When you've got someone like Miedema on the pitch, her football brain is and Hasegawa as well. Well, they're so intelligent in terms of what they're doing. Lauren Hemp at her best is super intelligent as well. So you've got the players there. You just need to have the manager to help them go through it and come up with the kind of scenarios where they can go from plan A to plan C without any thinking about it.
I think we saw a little bit of that under Nick Cushing, and I feel like perhaps some of that was his hand was forced because of the players that were available, but we did see him willing to do different things. And I know we keep coming back to that Chelsea game, but I remember sitting there thinking, how are you not starting Miedema when that's probably one of your key players to changing a game like this? They'll be so frustrated to have lost the League Cup final in the manner that they did as well. And actually it worked out tactically very, very smart and it worked out very well. So what do they need? Depth and a permanent manager.
Yeah, Andre Jeglerts, who's the current Danish women's national team coach, obviously going to the Euros with Denmark, but has been heavily rumoured to be the next Manchester City manager.
Rogue.
Tom Gary in The Guardian breaking that story. So yeah, that's going to be, they need to nail that down. It's a problem with the summer as well, because it gives managers less time. I guess it depends how Denmark finish. Going on Denmark's last game, it wasn't great. But at the same time, it still gives them less time to embed themselves and get themselves, getting players in that they want. I know there'll be a whole team at Manchester City on recruitment and all of that, but it's actually, managers need to be able to shape a team as well. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, you can't have boardrooms shaping a team. You have to have a manager shaping
Well,
a
it's
team.
going to be interesting to hear what Man City fans think of that, especially given Denmark's group and their recent result against Sweden, who is in their group. So is Germany and Poland, I believe. So if they don't get out of their group, it's not the most exciting kind of thing to attribute to a manager who might be coming in.
I am interested about how they settled on him.
And yeah, well,
intrigued.
Watch this space. Grade. How are we grading them?
Well, I was going to be nicer, and then you went harsher.
Okay, no, you be nice, because I feel like I've been too harsh. I put down C+, and I feel like that's too harsh.
I was going to go B minus.
B minus, okay.
I think you were thinking we were being too nice, but I think B minus. I think finishing 4th in the league. I know it doesn't get you
League Cup final.
Getting to the League Cup final. I know it doesn't get you,
quarterfinals of Champions League.
Yeah.
I just think some of the issues, the reason it's like sometimes you can't foresee that many injuries, but then you also think you can foresee not having enough depth. And had you more depth, would those injuries have been so impactful?
But B minus is worse than last year. So
that's true. Fair enough. Because last year I probably would have given them like an A.
And they were worse than last year. So.
Yeah. So, okay. Is that fair? It's fair. You tell us. Okay. Team number 4. It's going to be crap now when we get down to the last few teams. There's no noise.
Brighton, aren't they? Oh no, I didn't.
Yay, we've picked a team that
Crystal Palace
really struggled. Okay. Crystal Palace, where are you, my darlings? In the running order. Okay. Finished 12th. Points 10. 50 points off the top. Last year, promoted from the Championship. No, I'm not calling it that. Manager at the beginning of the season, Laura Kaminsky. Manager at the end of the season, Liv Smerud. Manager now, who knows, because he's gone. Top goal scorer, Annabelle Blanchard and Katie Stengel. Highlight of the season, beating Aston Villa 3-1 at home.
Yeah.
That kind of brought the relegation battle back. It was one of those, if they lose this, it's done and dusted. If they win this, the relegation battle carries on. And that's what happened.
They won it, and the vibe that day at Sutton was really, really good. Like, there was so much positivity. It's just a shame that they couldn't carry that on.
Yeah. And then the low point, sacking Laura Kaminsky. Okay, necessary context.
Amongst many other low points.
I mean, there were quite a few low points, yeah, but that was probably the biggest one in my opinion. Necessary context, newly promoted, not enough investment, arguably, to compete. They did have a couple of injuries that probably knocked them a little bit. But again, if they'd had a bit more depth and quality in depth, that might not have been so impactful. Your Sophie's season summary.
It is really hard making that step up from the Championship. And I think it was a step too far for Laura Kaminsky and her team in terms of having to absolutely change their style of play. They went from, this super attacking outlet in the Championship to win the Championship to having to defend for their lives. And I think the shift was way too big. I think the club they invested well in some respects. There were some big signings like Mikato coming in, and there were some other, Katie Stengel bringing in her experience. Again, another one who probably should have stepped up a bit more. I know she's top scorer, but she only scored 4 goals in the league. You would have expected more of an outlet from her. And they showed signs throughout the season of having character about them, but it kind of got off all on the wrong foot with that 7-0 loss to Chelsea in their first game of the season at Selhurst Park. Second game of the season.
Yeah, well, they lost 4-0 to Tottenham, didn't they, in the beginning? I think one thing that did impress me, which is probably why I was a bit frustrated with Laura Kaminsky's sacking, was that it did feel like you were seeing improvements, and it did feel like with each game they learned. And there were times, and if you look back at some of the detail of the games that they lost or drew or whatever it might be, the timing of the goals was such an inexperience issue. Conceding goals right before halftime, right after halftime, or in the
real moments.
The
that game against Aston Villa, and because Ebony Salmon scores in the 91st minute or something. There were so many games like that where they just couldn't hold on in that final bit to secure a draw, which maybe would have got them up the league or got them some momentum. I still really don't understand the Laura Kaminsky sacking. I don't think I ever will. I understand people will go, well, their results were terrible. And yes, they were, but there is context there, of course. And I just don't, it was a real Hail Mary. And I think the message that sends to the squad is that it's a Hail Mary, because they weren't doing badly because of Laura Kaminsky. Yeah. There was signs of things there you could tell, and you only had to remember back 8 months to remember the championship or the year before, and that run, and how together they were, and how much of a togetherness about that squad was, and what they were planning for. So I do think the Hail Mary they were already half dead already, but I think it completely killed them off in a way. And I know that they got the result against Villa, shortly after Leif came in. And to be fair to him, he seemed to be, I had many post matches with him. He seemed a very intelligent and nice guy. He was very strong on the psychology of things. But I just think that if you are going to do that, you have to bring in someone of the quality of, like, I don't know, MAs, which is hard to come by. But that kind of quality. If you're really going to play that Hail Mary card, you need to bring someone with a winning background. And as much as he was a nice guy, he had limited experience with Norway national team and all of that stuff. So, and the youth levels. So it wasn't kind of the statement replacement that you needed.
He did bring a bit of a manager bounce with that win, and with that 1-0 loss to Chelsea in the FA Cup quarterfinals, wasn't it? So
there were signs, but I just think that
it fell away at the end.
I don't necessarily think it was him. It was just,
look at that West Ham game. There's one of the lowlights, I think, the West Ham game right near the end, where they got absolutely hammered, pardon the pun. But yes, what do they need to improve? Depth in all areas, like more investment.
It's going to be interesting what they do now. I think this is the real problem when you drop down to the Championship and WSL too. But when you do that, it's now going to be up to the club, isn't it? How much they invest in it, and that's up to the board and the directors to see what they want to do. If they are willing to try and put in the effort to get back up again, then they're going to have to put in a fair amount of investment to rebuild, because it's so easy to go down and stay down.
Would it be fair to say that staying up is hard, but getting up is harder?
Yeah, when you look at the quality in the Championship as well. When you look at next season, you look at this season under City or Birmingham City, either of those will do well in the WSL, or will spend well to stay in the WSL. And there are the teams who have played really well. You even looking at like an independent club like Durham, who now have quite a lot of investment behind them with their Euro Millions winners. And they're looking to do something pretty special. You've got Newcastle who are spending the cash. They're going to only improve next season. I think they got 5th place. So I think there's so much competition for that one spot.
Well, this is the thing. The bonus of trying to stay up is only one team goes down. The negative thing about trying to get up is only one team goes up, right?
We've got like 5, 6, 7 teams who will step up next season and try and invest more, and you have to match them as well. And you can't just rest on your laurels and say, well, we were in the WSL last year, we can just rely on that. They will lose players as well. So inevitably players will go to the WSL standard, players will leave.
Bit of a sliding doors moment then for Crystal Palace. Grade?
We gave them, I think...
You can pick one of them.
A D.
We were going to be nice and do a C-, but...
No, I'm going
sorry.
With me.
Next team, please. Team number 5. Oh, by the way, I am using the Under-17s World Cup hat, so it is football related.
I've got West Ham.
West Ham. Lovely stuff. All the way down the bottom. Do you feel like UEFA's David when he's involved in the...
I do. I need to develop an Irish accent.
Please don't, because it won't. Just don't. You'll insult me. West Ham finished 9th. Points 23. 37 off the top. I'm questioning my maths every time I read these out. Last year, they finished 11th on 15 points, 40 points off the top. Manager at the beginning of the season, Rhian Skinner. Manager at the end of the season, Rhian Skinner. Top goal scorer, Shakira Martinez. Highlight of the season, I've said probably the draw versus Chelsea and the points off City and United. I just think they did quite well against some of those top teams, and I think learned a lot in the second half of the season. Low point of the season, probably too many draws and letting points slip away, particularly in the first half of the season where they could have gotten a draw or gotten the win.
It's similar to what we said earlier. They had a nasty habit in the first part of the season of conceding late.
Yeah.
So they get themselves in good positions, and then 18 minutes onward they start conceding, and they managed to get rid of that a little bit in the second half of the season.
Necessary context. Again, a team that probably needed a bit of time under a relatively new manager. You could see what they were trying to do, and I've been saying this in the early parts of the season. You could see the style that they were trying to play, and I think you saw from that time in the latter part of the season how that led to big improvements and how those relationships started to develop, and also just the relationships between the players started to develop. There seemed to be a good vibe in and around the squad. So I think that time massively helped. Sophie's season summary.
I think it's taken Rianne Skinner inevitably a bit of time to get the squad that she wants together, get the players and the personnel that she wants together. She said she made that really big plea at the start of the season about, and it was a plea to the club, I think, that you need to start nailing these players down on longer term contracts, and not losing them every season, because her first year was very much revolving door, and she had to reset last summer for this season. And I think she's now starting to get, for their investment in January 2024, and what they've done since, they're starting to get the players in that she actually wants in her squad, and she has a lot of faith in them, I guess, and for her style of play. And I think they've managed to amass quite a good squad that's gone under the radar. Maybe I think Asai has had the best season she's had in England so far.
She was their player of the season.
Yeah, she's been brilliant. She's really stepped up into that leadership role. You can see she's really thriving there. I think the midfield partnership of Katrina Gori and Una Sarin has been really their proper terriers in that midfield, and that's exactly kind of the intensity setting that Rianne Skinner likes to play with. You've had Amber Tiziak playing well at centre back, and then when you look at the recruitment of Shakira Martinez, I think is probably one of the best that happened this season. If you've been following youth German football for a while, she was probably the big name, but kind of dropped off a little bit. Managing to get her and then sending her back out on loan to Germany to perform, and she had a really good first half of the season, scoring goals, and she came back in January when she amassed the right number of points, and I think she came in top form, and she just didn't look back, and she's showing that quality that we all saw from her when she was 19, 18 years old.
What I was really impressed with from West Ham this season as well is the quality in depth. Taking the likes of Pavi and Puibal off the bench, having these players who could come on and change a game. You remember Pavi coming on and scoring against Manchester City. They have game changers off the bench, which I think at times teams further down the table have maybe lacked.
It allows West Ham time to embed them into the group. I think especially for someone like Manuela Pavi, I don't think she speaks much English, so it's probably taken her a bit of time to adjust to life in England, learning the language, getting used to the style of play. It's very different. So I think it's allowed them to use her when they need to use her rather than having to use her every single game. And it's allowed her to adapt. And, when she's come into games, she's looked really effective because of that. I also still think Rika Ricky is probably one of the best forwards out there. I'm completely underrated. But in terms of both, her technique, but physical presence as well, and her ability in the air is surprising.
And jamming between the sticks as well?
Yeah. I think, they're amassing a lot.
A good spine in that team.
And probably in the first half of the season, I disagreed, and I think you did, with a lot of people where they were like, we can't see what West Ham are doing. Their style is not there.
Perhaps people looking at results and not games.
You could see what they were doing, and I think in the second half of the year, you really saw that come to the fore. They surprisingly bounced back from that heavy defeat to Chelsea really, really well, and they just went on from there.
Yeah. I think the only disappointing thing with West Ham was probably their last handful of games where they at one point could have finished fifth with a couple of wins. And I think they'll probably be a little bit frustrated with that because they pulled out big performances against big teams and maybe didn't always replicate that against teams in and around them. But again, that's a learning. And I think actually, I know ninth might not sound that amazing, but it was all very congested between fifth and ninth. So I've been pretty impressed.
It balances on one or two results.
Yeah.
And I guess...
What do they need to improve?
I think they still need more depth across the park.
Defensively, I think as well.
Defensively, I know a few players have left as well, so they're going to need to build in, some backup players, to really challenge. I guess they need a big cup run, I think, next year. They're not going to like be anywhere
fifth. Yeah,
they're not going to be anywhere close to winning the league. So I think they need to think about finishing the top half of the table, getting that set, and then also having a cup run would be important for them.
And I just think shore up defensively a bit more experience, so it's less bodies on the line defending at times, which, you know, in the latter parts of the season really worked for them, especially against top of the table teams. But it might help prevent those tied games turning into losses, or those winning games turning into draws. So I think a little bit more experience there.
Beyond their starting 11 and maybe Manuela Parvi and a couple of others, they don't have enough strength and depth. So they need to invest in that, I think.
Overall grade?
I was going to add one more improvement. They have to play at the London Stadium.
Oh, thank you. At least once, for Christ's sake. At least once.
I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's embarrassing.
Yeah. But actually, their home form is quite good this season, so they managed to turn that into
I'm not saying
just giving that a little bit of credit. They did actually have quite good home form this
I'm
season.
not moving them away from Dagenham.
No, I know, but I forgot to point that out.
But they need a showpiece game.
They do, but I do think their home form in previous seasons, where they couldn't buy a win, and actually they did turn it into Dagenham into a bit of a fortress. Right, grade?
I think we're giving them a B-.
Is that too nice? Is that fair? Compared to, I mean, last season 11th,
compared to what I thought they were going to be like this season, I think it's fair.
I think they actually could have and should have finished a little bit higher, and last season they were constantly in the relegation chat a little bit. So I think they managed to keep themselves for at least the second half of the season out of that chat. Once they got a couple of wins under their belt. Okay, we've got one more team for this half of the podcast, of the double part podcast. Okay, what have we got?
We got Everton.
Let's give them a little tick off the list. All right, scroll on up, back up to E. Everton finished 8th on 24 points, 36 points off the top. Last year finished 8th on 23 points, 32 points off the top. Manager at the beginning of the season, Brian Sorensen. Manager at the end of the season, Brian Sorensen. Top goal scorer, Kelly Gago, Katja Snoys and Hanuka Hayashi, all clinching that one. Highlight of the season, probably beating Manchester City for the first time. They'd played them like 17 times or 16 times before and had never won a game. So I'd say that was probably the highlight of the season for them. Low point of the season, probably just generally that first half of the season, pre-Friedrichsen takeover. You know, I'm going to get into the injuries.
I can't remember after which game it was. I think it was after the Brighton game. They lost away, didn't they? Was it Brighton? And Megan Finnegan came out and said, we need support. Like, we can't, you know, this is not basically, this isn't feasible. We need investment and support for this club, because it's really, really, you know, and I think there were murmurings from the club throughout, from players and the like, saying, you know, it's not nice to go into work not having the backing and kind of the support to be able to perform to our best level.
Well, necessary context, lack of investment, particularly in that first half of the season, 3 ACL injuries to key players. And as you touched on, that kind of vibe around the team, they just felt like they were trying to survive. And I think they had done that last season, and they thought this season was going to be something different. And I think to not only have the financial issues, but also have key injuries again, it must have just felt like Groundhog Day. And as you say, it must be very tough going in knowing things aren't necessarily going to get better because there's no budget to bring in players. And Brian Sorensen was always very honest about that. Second half of the season, new lease of life, splashing the cash, 9 points in the first half of the season, 15 points in the second half. And those signings
there was at
they
some
made.
point in like end of March, beginning of April, where if you'd taken their results from November, they would have been 4th in the league.
Yeah.
Compared to like the others. So that shows the drastic terms of turn of events for them from the first half to the second.
Yeah, and just another example of how congested it was mid-table, because there were times where teams just didn't want points. You know, Brighton was holding the door open for 5th place and nobody seemed to want it. But I think it's an interesting when you put it like that. You realise actually, because normally you might just look at the table and think 7th, 6th, 8th, whatever. Actually, they had a pretty good run, and it was amazing what a bit of depth allowed them to do, what a quality striker allowed them to do. They struggled to score goals for so long in the first half of the season. And what I think a lot of managers say about Everton is that they're one of the most, what's the word I'm looking for?
Adaptable.
adaptable, but also the hardest to predict,
Yeah.
unpredictable teams, because they can play in a multitude of different styles. And even if it's like how they press, they can change it mid-game, or how they set up from the back, they can change it mid-game. And, you know, that's such a weapon to be so adaptable. And I think that's Everton all over. Last season, you had players playing in all sorts of positions, and perhaps that stood to them this season because it allows them to be much more adaptable when they need to be.
Yeah.
I think Renee Slegger said it, that they were one of the most unpredictable teams in the
Yeah.
league, which Brian Sorensen wears with the badge of pride, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think second half of the season, much better than the first. Some players really coming into their own. Kelly Gago.
You're doing my season summary.
Sorry. Sophie's season summary. Would you like to repeat everything I just said?
No, you carry on. It's fine.
Rachel's roundup.
Yeah, no, I think it's just that kind of tale of two halves. Things look pretty dire come November, and then things change around with the investment. I think there is so much optimism now around the club. They're playing Goodison Park next season, which is big for them.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Brilliant.
To get out of Walton Hall Park. And I know they were fond of Walton Hall Park, but it's not, sufficient.
The only good thing about Walton Hall Park was the pitch.
Yeah.
That was it. No offence.
You've got the same pitch as Goodison.
Exactly. That's why the pitch was good.
And I think the crowd also, when they did start to get some good numbers, I think there, and when they were there, it's a tight atmosphere, and it was good. But I think for the players themselves to be in, an elite training, like the facility like Goodison Park with the dressing rooms and all of the history that comes with it, it's an aura about the place, right? So that's going to be huge for them.
And an easy place to walk to, I imagine, for people living in and around the area.
Yeah,
so
it's properly,
things like
within, it's been a part of Everton's history and a history of the women's game, actually. For that's where Dick Her ladies played in that famous game. So I think it's a, really, really big move for them, big positivity. They're going to do some business over the summer. They've given Brian Sorensen a new contract that shows that they have faith in him. The fact that they've stuck with him through all of the mess, and it, not of his own doing, he had to get them through that.
Well, arguably the fact that he stuck with them through the mess.
Well, that too. But I think the fact that they've stuck with him, we've seen clubs all too easily sack managers for bad results or not getting a good enough finish, and they have stuck with him. So now he has this new kind of lease of life, and he has to now go and do something with it, and that adds a different kind of pressure in a way. But I think seeing what he did in terms of the transfer window, both last summer when he had no money, and at Christmas, getting in Kelly Gago, the fact that they went and got her before anyone else spotted that they went, that they wanted, and I'm sure there'll be people coming in, asking about her.
Keep them.
But I think, it's going to be, if he can do that kind of same kind of cunning, recruitment, they could be in a good position.
And get those key players back from injury.
Yeah,
or
Gali,
Megan Finnegan.
It's going to be so important.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to actually see what maybe Brian, I said this last season, what maybe Brian Sorensen can do with a fuller team. What do they need? Depth in all areas.
Yeah, they need recruitment. But I think we've got a sign that that's coming.
Yeah, so it's going to be an interesting season. Now, I'm going to ask you the grade, and part of me thinks people will tell us we've been too kind because they didn't improve on last season, except maybe by a point, but still in the same position. But given the necessary context,
I'm going to go B minus.
B minus. Now you can tell us if you disagree.
I'm sure everyone will tell me I'm too nice, but I just think that the context is absolutely key, and the fact that they have managed to battle through season after season within that context is huge. And I think since the turn of the year, we've seen what they can start to do, and the sort of formation of that. I was going to add in favourite quotes.
Oh yeah,
because from the first half, I have favourite quote from both managers.
Okay,
from Renee Sleggers, who talked about the trees. Do you remember?
Yes.
I can't remember the exact.
I can. Wording. She basically said that the tall trees catch the wind, implying that the players who are known for being good and are well-known players are more likely to catch the criticism when things aren't perfect.
That was about after Leah Williamson got a bit of criticism.
Yeah, after an England game.
And then the one from Brian Sorensen was when he said that they're in hunting season. When they were talking about trying to catch, the ones around them in the league. And it was just after the turn of the year. And he was like, this is hunting season now. And that made us all off.
That's what I was going to say. 24 points, 8th place may not seem great, but they were 4 points or 3 points off 5th. So actually, this was they were another team that could have, with 1 or 2 results, they could have finished in 5th place. So
Sorensen comes out with some really good quotes as well.
Yeah. And it's quite nice to see him happier in press conferences in this half of the season as well. So
rather than having a list of injuries.
He's got a very, very, very dry sense of humour, especially when it's around injuries.
So he's the one who started talking about building planes while they're flying.
Yeah. Basically it's like trying to fix the plane or build the plane while you're flying.
Yeah, a good one for the quotes.
Yeah, and I tend to adopt them and use them myself because they're very good. Okay, we're going to wrap it after 60 teams. We thought 12 might be a bit too much, but we will drop the second part of this episode on Thursday, so make sure you tune into that. Do let us know how you would have scored them. Were we too nice? Probably. We often are. Love to know what players stood out for you as well. Another thing we'd like to hear from you, if you don't mind, is what you would like to see from our Euros coverage. We are in full preparation mode. So if there's something you'd like to see, an angle you'd maybe like covered, do let us know and we will see what we can do, because...
Put it in the comments.
Yes, put it in the comments, message us. We would love to hear from you. Otherwise, we'll be back this week. Chat to you then.